guys? My name is Brandon, and welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find the latest album reviews, you can find our band interviews, and you can find live coverage of the concerts that we get. I was able to get Grayscale's set. If you haven't checked that one out yet, definitely do so. I also posted 2 album reviews, Kingdom of Giants and Grayscale. They both put out records today, so definitely go check those out if you have not already. I'm working on A Lot Like Birds. I hope to have that one out this weekend as well. I've just been kind of listening through it and getting my overall thoughts on it, but I wanted to kind of take a break from it and do a review of an album that's going to be coming out in 2 weeks, which I'm really excited to share with you coming up in just a few minutes. So if you enjoy what we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to hit that like button as well. It really does go a long way. And I'd like to give a shout out to both Stephanie and Lucy of Catalyst Publicity Group for sending me this record early. I'm really stoked to be able to check it out and give my thoughts on it via videos. So tonight we're going to be talking about Civil Use new record, Conversations. So first, I'd like to mention they are doing an album release show at TLA in Philly. If you are interested and going, definitely do so. I'm going to be out there. I'm really excited to see these guys live. While they are local, I have not seen them. I was going to see them with Blink 182 back in August of last year, but it just didn't work out. So I'm really excited to finally see these guys live. I know they are from Philly, so it's kind of weird for me to not have seen them prior to this. So I'm really excited to check out their set and just check out the new songs on this record, which I'm almost positive they will be playing since it's the release show. So if you're out in that area, definitely come say what's up. I will be at that show, and I'm excited to just hang, listen to some great music, and stuff like that. So I also did an interview with them back when they were going to do the Blink 182 thing. So if you want to check that out, definitely do so. I'll make sure to leave a link at the end card for you to go check it out. I hope to do one coming up really soon. Maybe I'll talk it over with them, but I'd love to, give their thoughts on how things have been over this past year and what things have changed. So I'm going to go through all the tracks. There's 13 of them. There's a lot of tracks on this record, but definitely all solid work. So I'm really excited to share my thoughts and opinions on each track. At the end, I'll kind of give my pros and cons of the entire record, and then I'll give it a rating. So definitely stay tuned for that. So we'll get into the first track of the record, which is 502 Sides. Really loving that synthy intro. I definitely enjoy that incorporation of electronic instruments in that regard. Reminds me of bands like 21 Pilots, Linkin Park, Paris, just to name a few. It definitely has that sort of flair to it. Really liking Mike's vocals. I think they definitely have a unique spin to atypical vocals in this sort of genre, so I definitely like what he's doing. He just has this sort of unique cadence to his voice, which I really enjoy. Really liking Dan's just guitar phrasing and stuff like that, whether it be just the tappy sort of lead parts or the rhythm parts. I think he really kind of just accents the whole track without being too overbearing. So I really enjoy that. I also like how how the tappy guitar parts fit in with a lot of the electronic parts. And they meld very well together. So in that regard, it's really solid on this track and a lot of tracks, but this one in particular. At the moment, really enjoy that. I also enjoy that this track is more poppy and sort of bouncy. Really enjoy that aspect of their music. I think that they've really kind of incorporated electronic instruments well into their music, and it definitely has that sort of upbeat and groovy vibes to it, which I really enjoy. I also love the utilization of piano in the bridge. I think that's really a solid effort on their part, kind of to slow it down a little bit, but still really enjoyable and something different than like maybe a guitar part or a drum part or something like that. Well, those are still in there. I think that it's cool that the piano kind of has that higher sort of, I guess, lead role, I would say. Also liking Mike's rapping. I think it's definitely a cool little, I guess, feature sort of a thing. I really enjoy that. Definitely reminiscent of 21 Pilots again, as I've been mentioning. Definitely Tyler Joseph has a lot of influence on Mike, I would say. So I really enjoy that. Also, Evans holding it down on the drum lines while they aren't like too crazy. I like that he's really kind of keeping everybody together, keeping everybody kind of focused in the track, which I really enjoy. I definitely enjoyed this as being a great opener track. It has that high energy, and I think it's definitely a great way to start off this record. So we'll move it into track number two, which is Belief, one of the singles that they released. Another one of my favorite tracks. I really love the gang vocals in the intro. I love how they utilize that. It also shows up in the chorus, I believe. So that's a really solid effort on that. I definitely feel like Evan's drumming really shines in the verses in this track. Like I've been mentioning, I think they all kind of switch off very well. Where there's some parts where Mike will have a little bit more reign over the track, whether it be through piano or singing, and then maybe Dan's parts will shine a little bit more with his guitar parts or backup vocals, or with Evan just his drumming and sort of electronic drum parts. I feel like they all kind of swap very well and interchange very well as well. I think the chorus definitely has this huge sounding feel to it. Loving the additional layers. I think that adds to the overall feeling and just hugeness of the track. Really liking the rap parts in the verse. I think that, and the singing in the choruses. I really like that balance between the two. It kind of makes it a little bit more interesting than the typical like, oh, I'm gonna sing in the verses, I'm gonna sing in the chorus. I think it kind of switches it up and changes it up with, which I really enjoy. This one just is a fast paced sort of high octane track. I think it's definitely a good second track to follow up 502. I think they both meld very well together and keep that high energy going. Really like the breakdown at around the 2:30 minute ish mark. I think it's really cool. I think it very pairs very well with the guitar solo that they had at the end. I think that's really solid. The gang vocals, as I mentioned in the chorus, are really cool, and it kind of adds this anthematic feel to it, which I really enjoy about this track. So we'll move into track number three, which is When We Collide. Another one of my favorite tracks. It has this sort of Linkin Park vibe to it, which I really enjoy because, it definitely reminds me of like either, I would say, hybrid theory or kind of Meteora. Probably more hybrid theory, but I really enjoy that. Loving the utilization of, again, synths, piano, all of those sort of things, acoustic guitar. I think they definitely kind of added a lot of elements, and I feel like when you have a lot of elements in tracks, it kind of gets hard for you to decipher certain things. But I feel like initially when you listen to the tracks, it's tough to decipher everything, but after a few listens, I feel like you're able to pick out like the guitar, you're able to pick out the synth. At least in my opinion, I was able to kind of differentiate each part and really kind of enjoy each part for what it is, and then just have it all come together in a solid sort of unit. I really appreciate that. Vocal layerings are insane. I feel like they just add another element to just another to the list. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I think it's definitely cool. And if you have the chance to sit down and listen to it with some like really decent headphones, I would do so, because there is a lot of like depthy sort of things that are in these tracks that if you were just listening to earbuds, you may not be able to get the full aspects of it, which I really enjoy. So, a lot of these tracks, I feel like if you're gonna listen to it with some nice sounding headphones. I feel like just with the overall just different instruments, I feel like there's no staleness in these tracks in particular. There's always something that will catch your attention. There's always something that will just, get you moving and listening to it, or picking something out that you weren't necessarily like finding, I guess, if that makes sense. But it definitely has that sort of just like one thing to the next and next and next, but it's really enjoyable at the same time. So really enjoying the rap part in the bridge as well. I think it's definitely cool paired with the piano. They do that a lot, but I really enjoy it. And then just loving the ending guitar riff from Dan. I think he definitely put up some really awesome riffs. Not only in this track, but a lot of the tracks off the record definitely are harkening back to like my post-hardcore days, which I still listen to post-hardcore. I don't know why I said it like that, but definitely has those post-hardcore sort of vibes as well. So I'm glad glad that they're incorporating that into the songs. So we'll move into track number 4, which is Dark Depths. Dark Depths. Debts. There we go. I said it right. Dark Debts. This one is another one of the singles that they released. Um, Definitely one of my favorite tracks off the record. One of my favorite singles that they've released. Really loving the synth forward sort of intro. The guitars, plus the guitars in the intro as well. It really kind of adds this sort of like odd feeling to it, but I really enjoy it. Liking how ambient and kind of reverby this track is. It's very full sounding. It has this sort of like ethereal sort of feeling to it. Really loving the leads into the chorus. I think Dan has really kind of made his mark on a lot of these tracks. This one in particular, I really enjoy. I also enjoy the synthy sort of breakdown at around the 2 minute mark. I think it's a really solid one. Has this cool sort of just vibe to it. If you've listened to Dark Dead, you'll know what I'm talking about. Also liking Mike's vocal tone on this track as well. I think they've just been really solid throughout, but definitely in particular this one. I really enjoyed this one a lot. And then I really like the combination of both electronic instruments and real instruments. I like that they kind of don't lose track of the real instruments that they can actually play, as opposed to like the electronic instruments like the synth and stuff like that, which are kind of added in. But I mean, you can add into a live aspect, but um, I like the combination of the two just combining together. Really think it's solid work. So we'll move into track number 5, which is Just Set Fire. This one definitely has this slower feel to it. This track actually reminded me a lot of Louder Than Thunder by The Devil Wears Prada, ironically enough. Or not ironically enough, just oddly enough. But I think it's cool nonetheless. Really loving the vocal and piano combo. Like I said, it's kind of prevalent throughout this record, but I really enjoy that. I think it's definitely a nice break from the instrument laden tracks. I feel like a lot of these tracks are just like in your face. So it's cool to have kind of a break and a little bit of a stop, I would say, to the tracks. I feel like they're not overbearing, but I feel like there definitely needed to be a slower track, which this kind of fills the void of. Really liking the like I've been saying, liking the break of the instrument laden tracks. Also enjoy the ambient aspects of this track. I feel like it's definitely another element that they can add to the list. It just has this sort of like just reverby sort of full sounding feel to it, which I really enjoy. It definitely has this sort of haunting, sort of dark undertones, either vocally or instrumentally. It definitely has this sort of like eerie sort of feeling to it, especially with kind of the screams that Mike does in the background. It definitely has that sort of like scary. I wouldn't even say scary. It just has this sort of like dark sort of feeling to it, which I really think is a cool little touch that they added. I feel like the leads in this track in particular add this sort of depth to it, which is, I would say, is kind of needed. It feels very like dark, but at the same time, if the leads come in, I feel like it kind of adds a little bit of a break to it, which I really enjoy. And I like how it leads into the next track, which is track number 6, Between You and Me. One of the singles that they released, probably the most recent single that they released. It's definitely one of my favorites. While it be a little bit of a slower track, I really like the melody and the sort of synthy parts where it's very like mellow, but at the same time, it's still a really great track. Really liking the great piano intro done by Mike. All the piano sort of work has and synth work has been done by Mike, so I really enjoy that. If I hadn't already mentioned that previously, also like the inclusion of acoustic guitar from Dan. I think that's a really solid thing, especially in the verses. It kind of adds this sort of naturalness to the track, which I've been kind of missing out on because there's a lot of like electronic elements to these tracks. So I like that they included acoustics in this track. Um, Really liking this sort of ambient, spacey, reverby sort of atmosphere that this track has. It has such great melodies, so paired with that ambient sort of spacey feeling, I really like that combination. I think Evan definitely kind of added or created the backbone of this track. It definitely has, I guess, a centerfold to Evan. He just kind of adds this sort of centerness to the track. which I really enjoy. Another super catchy chorus from these guys. And then I think just Dan adding like either lead guitar parts just kind of add this overall ethereal feeling to it, which I really enjoy. And then just also the vocal layering from Mike, I think it's really solid. It kind of adds this ambience to the chorus, which is kind of needed, and I think it kind of adds a cool little effect to this track. So we'll move it into track number 7, which is Stay. Another one of my favorites. It has this sort of anthematic feel to it, with the drums and the vocals. It definitely reminds me of Blink 182's new stuff, especially in the choruses. It has that sort of, I feel like Blink 182 vibes to it. Really liking these sort of atmospheric sort of verses and the catchy choruses. I think that that's really solid. Definitely has those sort of happy vibes to it. And then this track has this sort of hugeness to it, which I love. I'd love to see how it plays out live if they do in fact do this track live. I'd like to see how that sounds in comparison to this version, but I do like the overall fullness of this track. I think it's really solid. So we'll move into track number 8, which is Echoes. It's kind of like an interlude, adds this sort of atmospheric piece to the entire record. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, you know how I feel about interludes. I like that they add kind of depth to the overall album. I like that this one has a little bit more girth to it. It definitely has more vocals and stuff like that. It was just a little bit more thought out, I feel like. I also feel like this track reminds me a lot of like Paris and their sort of vibes that they're going for. And then it just has this sort of atmosphere to it, which I really enjoy. So we'll move into track number 9, which is Let You In, and this is featuring Bradley Walden from Emerosa, which I really enjoy. This one's one of my favorite tracks as well. Probably one of my favorite tracks off the entire record. Really loving the clean, sort of reverby, delayed guitar intro with Mike's vocals. I think, and then after that, it kind of starts off really soft, but then it just kind of kicks in full force. Really loving that guitar intro from Dan. I think it's super solid. This one definitely has those sort of dancey vibes to it that will get you just really pumped for it. Really loving the choice of synth in the verses. Really solid effort from Mike on that part. I think Bradley's part was absolutely killer. Probably one of my favorite features that he's been on. Period. I think he just kind of just nailed it. He just does these awesome sort of runs and just good stuff. So if you've listened to 131, you know what I'm talking about. But he just does an excellent job. I think this was probably one of my favorite features of this year, without a doubt. It just has this sort of bounce to it and groove to it. Just this entire track is just absolutely monstrous. Loving the additional layering. It just adds so much to the atmosphere of this track. And just the breakdown at around the 2 minutes and 20 mark just goes in, absolutely a banger. The bridge was absolutely killer, and then just this track goes in. It's just one of my favorite tracks. It just has this sort of high intensity, and just vibes to it. I would say that this one is probably one of the more heavier tracks off the record, and like I mentioned many times, easily one of my favorite tracks off the record, without a doubt. So we'll move it into track number 10, which is Jaded. Really loving the scratchy sort of intro with the synths. I think that's a really cool part. Also loving the tappy sort of parts in the pre-chorus as well. Definitely has that sort of pair sort of vibes to it. Another really catchy chorus as well. And definitely Mike can spit some bars without a doubt. If that wasn't blatantly obvious, I feel like this track kind of shines in that regard in terms of Mike's just rapping ability. Just the speed at which he does some of the rap lines. I feel like this kind of accentuates just his rap abilities. So if you really like Mike's rapping bits, this track is for you. Most certainly, I feel like this one is more Mike centric. If you like Mike's stuff, I feel like you'll definitely enjoy this one. So we'll move into track number 11, which is Part of Me. Another one of my favorite tracks. This one also has those sort of Paris vibes to it as well. If they ever did a tour together, that would be bueno. That would be great. Really loving the atmospheric feelings of this track. Really solid on their part. Really like the mellowness as well. I think just the mellowness and the melody that they combine together is just really solid. And then I like how it completely kind of changes before the first chorus, and then just picks up. And I think at first I wasn't really sold on it, but after a few listens, it really got to me, which I really enjoyed. I also like that they included some more darker undertones throughout this track. I think that's definitely a cool little feeling from them. Also liking the different vocal layers in this track as well. And then I just feel like this one just is a really solid track. I like that some of the vocals have this sort of grit to it. I don't know if it's whether Mike or Dan, because I know Dan does backup vocals. But just really solid vocal performances from either of them. Um, so that's why I really enjoy this track. So we'll move into track number 12, which is Vacancy. I really like the real open sort of intro. It has elements of synth, reverby guitar, reverby drums, and just the cool additional layers that they add synth. I feel like it kind of just adds a sort of atmosphere to it. I know I've been using that a lot, but definitely has that sort of atmospheric, spacey, sort of reverby feel to it, which I really enjoy. I also enjoy the mellowness and melody, very similar to the last track, but I think they just did it a little bit not as good as the other one. I feel like this one is just a more mellow sort of track. It doesn't kind of pick up. I feel like the second half is absolutely killer. The outro is super cool. Thanks to Evan on drums. I think he really does a solid job. And then I like how Dan's leads kind of permeate throughout this track. I would say that this track is more Dan focused, which I really enjoy. And I think it's definitely a sort of like ethereal sort of track. So if you enjoy that sort of style, I feel like you'll enjoy this track. So we'll move it into the last track, track number 13, Conversations, These Ghosts. One of my favorite tracks. The riffs on this track in particular are just absolutely great. I think Dan has just kind of nailed that sort of just distorted guitar parts mixed with a lot of other elements, so everything doesn't get drowned out by the guitars. I feel like it fits very well into the mix. It fits very well into the track. This one definitely has this sort of high energy to it. Also, like this shift around the 40-second mark. I think it's definitely a little cool transition that they added in. And I just like how it picked up after the transition. It was starting off kind of cool, and then they just absolutely just changed up the game after that, which is awesome. Really liking the additional vocals by, I believe it is Dan, that does the backup vocals on this track, which I really enjoy. If it's not Dan, Mike, you could probably let me know about that. Also, I love the breakdown at around the 2 minutes and 20-second mark. I think it absolutely goes in, rivaling some of my favorites of this year. Um, I'm really liking the slowdown in the bridge. I think just with the acoustic guitar and just the layering, I think it adds a sort of just anthematic feel to it. Easily, probably one of the more interesting tracks. It just has this sort of chain, so it has so many changes to it, which in turn keeps it very lively. Which I really enjoy because this track is probably the longest track off the record, and I like that they did different things. They really had a diverse track, and they just kind of switched it up and did what they wanted to do, which I really enjoy. And they definitely kept it very interesting. Easily one of my favorites off the record. I think this is definitely a great way to end the record off. And then just that orchestral ending just sounded huge. I sounded awesome. And I feel like this entire record, it's 13 tracks. I definitely feel like it takes you on a musical sort of journey, which I really enjoy. So I'm gonna get into the pros and cons. A lot of the pros, I feel like they definitely did something that is diverse. While they do have elements that are similar to a lot of bands, I feel like they definitely did it in their own style, which kept them very different. They do incorporate elements of like EDM. They incorporate elements of alternative music. They incorporate elements of um, post-hardcore and just a bunch of different genres. So, and they definitely have some rap parts from like 21 Pilots, and they have some synth parts that kind of remind me of Linkin Park. So I definitely feel like if you like those bands, I feel like this is the thing for you. It's definitely diverse. They definitely have some heavier tracks. They have some more lighter, mellowy tracks. They have some more anthematic tracks. I definitely feel like there's just a great mix of everything, and definitely kept me as a listener very interested and wanting me to go back and listening to it, even while it being 13 tracks. I feel like it flows very well. Just the song structures were very well, and I just like the ending, how it went that way. And not like, I mean, it definitely has that high energy to it, but just in a different sort of sense. So, really enjoy that. So, my overall rating for Civil Youth Conversations, I'm going to be giving it a 9.5 out of 10. I definitely feel like it's one you should check out, without a doubt. I feel like if you like Dark Depths, if you like Beliefs, if you like Between You and Me, I feel like this album will just kind of blow you out of water. Um, in terms of that, I feel like it's very diverse. I feel like it's definitely an all around sort of album. And I think for people who like just alternative music in general, this album will definitely cater to you. So, um, definitely let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the singles. I really enjoyed them. I'm excited for you guys to check out the full thing. I will leave a link in the description for you to go pre-order this. Also, go follow them on social media to check out what they're doing. They are also doing a tour. I think for Midwest, I'm pretty sure. So definitely check that out. Check out those dates if they're coming to you. I would recommend seeing them. I'm excited to see them on their album release show. So definitely get stoked on that. And yeah, so let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on Civil Youth. Have you heard of them? Do you like their music? If you haven't, I would recommend going and check them out. I'm excited to pick that record up and just have it in my collection. So, my name is Brandon. If you enjoy what we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to hit that like button as well. If you enjoy us a lot, we also have a merch store, which we have a link in the description as well. So definitely go check that out if you are interested in purchasing stuff. Your support is greatly appreciated. So, like as I mentioned, my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you enjoy what we do, make sure to go check out the other series we do. We do album reviews, we do band interviews, and we do live videos, so definitely go check that out. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel, helps us grow. Make sure to hit that like button as well. Go follow us on social media. That's all down below. We try to keep that as updated as possible. We also made a new website where we'll be posting photos of upcoming concerts and stuff like that, which you can go check out at audioaddictionmedia.com and come get your fix with us, guys. Talk to you later. Deuces.